Welcome. It's another Red October special, Red October Thursday, and there's one big game. That's right. As we await Saturday, Citizens Bank Park, who will it be? Mets, Brewers. It's a Red October brought to us by Ace Hardware. Red October, always powered by Ace Hardware Home Services. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. Ace is the place. All right, let's welcome in my cohort. He, of course, is my man, the great Jim Salisbury. Jimmy, October baseball, man. The only thing that stinks about today on this Thursday is that there's no games, man. I've been loving, the 2:00 start, right? 4:30, 4 games. There's something about playoffs and baseball. It's the greatest, buddy.
Yeah, well, I'm taking the opportunity of a free afternoon. I'm looking forward to tonight, Mets and Brewers. But, I was out in the garden. I have a bumper crop of poblano peppers and jalapeno peppers. So I was out taking them off, and I'm making a poblano jalapeno pork stew. And it's gonna be awesome, and I'm gonna be eating that while I'm watching the Brewers and Mets tonight. What do you think?
Oh, that's fabulous! Oh my God, I want some. I'm jealous. I'm a pepper man, so I think that sounds delicious, man. A little Brew Crew Mets and the pepper stew. It's tremendous.
Bring it.
All right, so let's get down to it. Let's start off with the big game, and that's tonight again. Brewers, Mets. Quintana goes for the Mets against that Tobias Myers. So last night, it looked like the Mets were about to close out Milwaukee, and Jackson Chourio, who is just phenomenal, 20 years old. You saw 2 home runs. He tied the game, and then Mitchell with a blast to give the Brewers the win. Does that make the Mets magic dissipate a little bit, the fact that they blew that lead the way they did?
You have to think that they were thinking just that thought when they got on the bus last night and had to go back to the hotel, thinking that they had wrapped up a series, kept their magic going, and were headed to Philadelphia. Instead, they headed back to play Milwaukee again tonight. A loss, especially, you lose a game late. I mean, it just stings.
It does.
Losing a game late, it can demoralize you. It can beat you down. There was a lot to that. Carlos Mendoza, the manager's had a great year. I mean, I give him. I think he's going to get some manager of the year votes. I think both these guys are, Pat Murphy and Mendoza. They might finish 1-2. But he takes Stanek out. And they go with Phil Maton, and he gives up a couple bombs. That Chourio reminds me of Miguel Cabrera when in 2003 he was 20 years old, hitting fourth, and the Marlins lineup. Hits 2 home runs. Of course, the big one late, and then Mitchell goes deep. So it sets up a winner take all. I think Myers is a rookie. Quintana is a veteran, knows his way around, left-hander, crafty.
Although the Brewers hit Quintana, the Brewers, because they could put together a really good right-handed lineup. So obviously Chourio, Adames hits Quintana pretty well. You got Contreras, Sanchez, both right-handed bats that can do damage. So the Brewers have that kind of right-handed lineup to really, I think, to tax Quintana.
Yeah, my point about Quintana, I don't think he's going to be awed by the situation. No. I think he's going to remain cool. He's a veteran. I know it's whoever plays the best is going to win this game. You got to make big pitches down the stretch late in games like this, and it has to just sting the Mets because it was well within their grasp, sealing that one up. We'll see if they can post tonight and try to get it back after being so close.
Who do you want to see? There's a part. Listen, obviously, I think the Phillies match up better against Milwaukee. I do. Although something about Phillies Mets, they've never played in the postseason against one another. I mean, it would be kind of a good sign. It would be kind of a fun Philly, New York, the whole thing. It would be a blast.
Yeah. I think either one would be a good one. I mean, you have the whole Rhys Hoskins element, potentially returning to Philadelphia for a big postseason series. But yeah, you're right. I think the Mets are probably the Phillies' closest rival. I know they got a good thing going with the Braves, at times the Nationals. When Jack McKeon was with the Marlins, he used to love to beat up on the Phillies. There was a lot there. But the Mets for the proximity, and me personally, I've always enjoyed Mets Phillies. I can remember them making, I remember the time they made a trade at the deadline where Todd Pratt and Turk Wendell basically just changed clubhouses in Shea Stadium. And the next day they were the battery for the Phillies, and Wendell gives up a late home run. I remember Robin Ventura giving up or hitting a home run off Turk Wendell the day after, who was his teammate 24 hours earlier. I was the guy who used to like to go to Shea Stadium. I loved Shea Stadium, and I mean, even for its slow. Remember how slow that press elevator was?
Dude, it was my office. It was my home away from home for a good bit when I was covering them. It was, it was Shea.
I loved going up there, and I loved writing about Piazza. Every time I'd go up there, I'd write about Piazza. He was I'm obviously a Philly kid writing for a Philly newspaper, so I'd write about him all the time. He was such a down-to-earth superstar.
Mike was terrific. Yeah,
and I loved seeing Jay and Shannon in the press box, and Chris and in the press room with the pictures.
Jimmy's talking about the Mets PR guy was a guy named Jay Horwitz, who was a character. He was like a lifelong baseball bachelor who was a character.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ties, the Philly New York thing.
And then it only got better in 2007 when the Phillies chased down the Mets with 17 games to play. Jimmy Rollins, were the team to beat. I mean, the gall to say that. They hadn't been to the postseason in 14 years, and he says that, and then he backs it up and wins the MVP, beats out like David Wright, who was great, Matt Holliday, who was great. So, and, the fans come down here and they take over. They try to take over the stadium. At times they do when the Phillies aren't good. So, I think it's a fun, interesting rivalry, and I think from a fan's perspective, it would really be compelling to see the Phillies and Mets play. But we'll see what happens tonight, later on.
Yeah, I think either way, if we're looking at matchups, I think either way, I mean, the Phillies should have a decided advantage. I mean, I get the hot team thing, and we talked about the Mets, and, they since June 1st, they were among the hottest teams in baseball. And, we remember this from 2022 and the Phillies run. But one of the things is their bullpen is not good. And I think you saw that last night. I don't think they have a lot of trustworthy arms back there. I think the Phillies are just a more complete team than either the Mets or the Brewers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, this is the Phillies' third year in a row to the postseason. This is probably their most complete team of those three, their most balanced team of those three. They have a powerhouse offense. When it's clicking, it can be prone to some dark periods of inconsistency, and you kind of have that floating out here as hoping that's not going to rear its head. But obviously, they built that great record over 2.5 months on the backs of their starting pitching. They have 4-5 very dependable arms in the bullpen that Rob Thompson can go to late in games. And when those guys are dealing, they are tough, Kirkering, Alvarado, Hoffman,
Strom,
and now Estevez. So he's got 5 guys he can really trust down there. Obviously, you got Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez.
And
Phillies,
Ranger, and let's talk about the Phillies for a second. And Ranger is a wild card, right? Like, so he's a guy that if you can use him in relief, he's unflappable, and I'm sure they probably don't want to expose him to 2 times around an order, but you can get 2-3 innings out of him.
Anthony, obviously he had the back injury midseason, missed time. Then he came back and he's taken a regular turn, so he's healthy. They wouldn't put him out there if he's not healthy. His disappearing act is confounding. It's very mysterious to me how a guy was 30 years old, 29 or 30 years old, and can go from first 2 months. As we fantasize, hey, this guy might be a Cy Young contender in a couple months, and then just kind of drop off the map. I don't know what happened. It looks like he's not in the greatest shape. His stuff doesn't really measure up to what it was early. That said, you mentioned his unflappable nature. He's kind of got that Cliff Lee, whatever quality to him. And he's a left-hander. They're goofy, like he could show up one day and just like be the Ranger of May 1st. So you never know. It's there. I don't know where it's gone, but it's still somewhere deep down in there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he went out there and really had a great one in the number 4 spot. But I really feel good about the top 3.
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting, right? The talk with Ranger is that because, he's lost velo, that because the back was bothering him, that he's not been connected, which has kind of dipped his velocity, that his legs haven't been connected to him in his delivery. And I think that's partly, when you have back issues, you're more tentative and it changes the way you use your legs. And they talked about connectivity being the key. So it's interesting. They kind of identified what has caused the lack of velocity. So, maybe like you said, they are weird and all of a sudden can click for him. And when he is on, he really is. He's dangerous.
You're right. We saw it for 2 months. He might, Zach Wheeler is going to be 1 or 2 in the Cy Young race. He might have been better than Wheeler the first 2 months. So what a boon he could be in, a couple of different roles. If, get to game 4, he's on the mound. He's certainly capable of pitching well if he can somehow get it. If that's the day he finally gets it all together here. But you get in other situations, I think he could help you out of the bullpen. I mean, in his career with the Phillies, he's been an exceptional starter at times. He's been a closer, a very good one. He's been a long reliever and a setup man. So he can do a lot of different things. I don't think he stresses too much about his role, but you would like to see him in this particular series if you need him. Come out and give him 5 or 6 good innings.
All right, let's focus on Topper's decisions. All right, there's to be 3 of them. Number 1 is, what do you do game 2 versus game 3? The home road splits with Sanchez. Do you start Sanchez at home in game 2 and pitch Nola on the road where he's much more comfortable, in that kind of environment? It appears like Topper, and he said he's waiting for the opponent, and certainly if it's the Mets, my guess is he would start Nola at Citi Field. It feels like he's leaning towards Sanchez at home.
Yeah, as I saw his comments yesterday and listened to his comments and kind of parsed through them, that was the vibe I was getting, though. It wouldn't surprise me if he went either way, but, he did talk about the potential of maybe splitting up the lefties. Splitting up the righties, splitting up Wheeler and Nola by inserting a lefty in the middle in Sanchez. He did say you can't ignore the home road splits, how comfortable and how productive and efficient Chris Sanchez has been at home. There's a couple schools of thought. You go Wheeler, Nola, and you try to take a big lead right out of the gate with your 2 best. But at times this year, Sanchez has pitched like one of your very best, many times. So he could maybe come out and do just as well in that second game and have him in a comfortable environment where his numbers are great. He's pitched some good games on the road. I think this is misconception that he hasn't pitched some good games on the road. He has. He's just had some clunkers. That's driven his ERA up. Where Nola's got a little of that range in him, kind of like nothing bothers him, very unflappable, shrug, whatever you need, real team guy. Um, if he doesn't pitch game 2, I don't think he's going to be offended at all. He's going to go
No.
out and do a great job in game 3. And because he's so unflappable, because he's so veteran, I don't think pitching in a hostile environment in Citi Field will bother him. I mean, he's had huge games up there. I think he struck out 10 in a row to open a game up there a couple of years ago. He's faced the Mets and the Braves a ton. They know him well. The key for Aaron Nola is not going to be where he pitches. It's going to be where his pitches are. He's going to have to locate really well. And he's certain when he does, he's tough to beat. So I love where the Phillies are. I think this is a good problem, how to line it up. They got 3 good ones.
All right. The second decision will be lineup, right? And when lefty righty, and how you deploy the outfield, right? Are you going to go Rojas? You got really stress defense. What about Stott at second versus when you think about Sosa and the fact that he can hit lefties? So I think those are 2 decisions. That's the second decision. What are you going to do with the lineup versus the matchups?
Yeah, you got a decision in the outfield. You got a decision at second base. Second base, you need 11 wins, right? And this is not the time to worry about giving guys a shot, making sure they get a fair shot, making sure they get an opportunity. You have, a lot. You have 6 months of intel and 7 months with spring training, and you have previous years. You have all these bodies of work that you can go to work on. Stott has struggled this year. Sosa hits righties. Sosa hits lefties. Stott has struggled against lefties. I think you could see a platoon there. I think it might be your best route. I know you'd maybe give up a little bit defensively. I mean, Stott is really good around the bag. He's quick on the turn. But Sosa, I've seen him play a lot of good games. I think they could opt for offense there and go with a platoon there. I don't know. Rob might just decide to ride Stott. Who knows? But Stott struggled against lefties, and Sosa has hit him. I think that'd be a good way to get some more offense without losing a ton of defense in left field. And I think it probably will ride Rojas in center field. His defense is elite. I mean, defense is like we saw in 2022 against the Astros in the World Series. I mean, defense was such a decider in that Game 5. There was a play that Hoskins didn't make that led to Houston scoring a run. And then Chas McCormick climbs the wall, the center fielder, and takes away maybe a run-scoring triple from Real Muto, like the play of the series, all in the final innings of Game 5. Defense is so important always, but, I mean, it just – you can really spotlight it in the postseason. So I probably would ride Rojas in center and platoon Marsh and Hayes in left. I mean, they got Hayes because he hits left-handed pitching very well. The Mets, if it's the Mets, they got 3 lefties in their rotation.
Yeah.
I would at least start off that way, and then if you have to adjust, you have to adjust. But I could see a platoon at second and a platoon at in left field. And like I said, I think Rob is going to be open to adjusting. He's made some calls in 2022. They really went by the book. Their pregame plan in Game 6 of the World Series was to get Alvarado on Alvarez late. Alvarez hits the big home run. They pulled a Wheeler. He stuck with Kimbrel last year. He stuck with Rojas last year when Rojas wasn't hitting. There's been times this season, even going back to spring training, where Rob has hinted that, maybe he was a little too committed to his guys and maybe he'd be a little more flexible down the road. This could be an opportunity. I think when we see that flexibility and maybe he leans toward making, in-series decisions, personnel decisions, change the mix a little bit. But at least out of the gate, I don't know this for sure. He hasn't announced anything. We'll probably just know when he puts out the lineup. I think this team would benefit from the platoon situations in second.
I agree.
And the field, you need 11 wins. You got to go out and put that best lineup you possibly can to get a win that day.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I think you got to go defense with Rojas, and I think you got to go Sosa against lefties.
If they hit like they should, They can carry Rojas.
Exactly.
And we saw Rojas get a couple bunts down the other night, and
Yes.
he's going to hit
Yes.
and run. There are ways he can contribute if he's not hitting. And
I'm with you.
you
All
know,
right.
if
The
they hit the way
third.
they should, and avoid lineup inconsistency, they can deal with Rojas. If
I'm with you.
they're all cold, he might have to make some adjustments.
All right. The third decision that Rob is going to have to look at is the batting order. All right. Who are you going to bat fourth? For much of the year, it's been Castellanos. He's kind of had this kind of stranglehold on the cleanup spot. It feels like he's leaning to keep him there. You obviously have Bohm and you have JT as other possibilities. Do you keep Casty in the 4-hole?
Castellanos is a guy that I think to get the most out of him, he needs to really feel good about himself and his game.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think he's, he's a complicated guy. And I think confidence is crucial to his game. And if that's the spot he feels good in and he's produced there late in the season, I would go with that. But I will say this, Bohm had a pretty good run there.
Yep.
Earlier in the year. I mean, he had that one bad month in June, I think. But, boy, he drove in everything earlier in the season. So I think you got two good options. And I don't know how he's going to go.
Real quick, the thing I like about Bohm, too, in the 4-hole is, when you got runners on third and it could be one out, Bohm is usually his play coverage is really good. And he'll put the bat on the ball and he'll get the run home.
He will use the whole field.
Yeah.
In this era of everybody looking to lift and drive the ball in the air over the wall, he has never really wavered from a line drive approach, and he used the whole field approach. And he's big and strong enough that when he gets the right pitch, and that's a pitch that he can elevate on or launch a little bit on, it goes over the wall. I think he's a very gifted hitter. Either way, when Castellanos is on, man, and he's swinging at strikes and having good reactions at the plate,
yes.
And he gets that. When he gets a spinner that just sits there over the plate, you can almost see the bat head uncoil, and he crushes it. So when he's feeling good about himself and confident, he has a tendency to lay off spinners off the plate, wait for the mistake, wait for the fastball over the plate. It can be very dangerous. If he starts chasing, that's when you might have to make a lineup adjustment. But I don't know which way Rob is going to go, but I do think intangibles, there's more to just even like that given at bat. I think he thinks about intangibles like where does a player thrive? Where's his confidence best at? I mean, I think that's one of the reasons, besides the fact that he's productive, I think it's one of the reasons that Kyle Schwarber leads off. He loves
totally.
leading off. He feels good about himself there, and that's where you're going to get his best performance. And when you feel good about yourself, you're going to probably perform better. That's one of the reasons they like him there, because he likes it, feels good about himself, and they believe that puts him in a better position to produce.
Yeah, I'm with you. JT, you like JT at 5 or 6?
Either one. I like him at 6. I don't mind him a little bit down because I think it balances things out and gives you a little production.
Yeah.
Down, and on kind of on the gateway to the bottom of the order. But look, it ain't going to matter if they all produce the way they can.
My guy, the guy that, to me, if he's raking, they're not getting beat, and that's Turner. Because you know what Schwarber and Bryce are going to give you. And if Turner gets hot, he can be really – he could carry you.
You're right, and Rob's going to play with it. If they're facing a righty and Stott's in there, he's going to break up some righties. I could see him maybe batting before JT. But it's just – they just all need to produce and avoid these periods of chasing and striking out and swinging and missing and leaving runners in scoring position. These periods of inconsistency, which we saw a lot of in the second half.
Yeah. So a lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest fear going in is that the offense has one of its spells, like we kind of saw against the Diamondbacks last year. But
It's kind of
when
it's
they're clicking, they're awfully good.
yeah, and it's interesting because like that's in the forefront of their mind. So Kevin Long was doing the cranking up the machine and doing it at cutting down to 50 feet, and he was trying to get just so. And it was interesting because I'm thinking like velocity, they're a dead red team, so velocity's never really been their issue. And then there's some guys in the back end that could really, kick it up to 102, 103 across baseball. But I don't worry about them, against heat. I worry about them when they start pitching them backwards.
Yeah, and we saw that in Atlanta. Atlanta late in the season threw them a lot of breaking balls, a lot of stuff off the plate, and they were chasing. Stott has not handled fastballs as well this year as he has in the past. But it all comes down to how that fastball is located. You start getting over anxious, you start getting behind in counts, you start chasing high fastballs. They're tough to handle. That's why you can't miss mistakes. You have to be that sharp that when a pitcher gives you that one pitch you can handle, you got to be right on it. And you're right. They spend, and all teams nowadays at all levels of the game spend a lot of time, hitters do, training against velocity, because pitchers have spent the last decade plus training to build their velocity. So everybody in the game throws so much harder now. Every bullpen has 4 and 5 guys who are 96 to 100. It seems.
Yeah, look at the Padres.
Yeah, so they're in their back every day, seeing velocity, staying ready. It's just a power game in terms of pitching and even hitters looking to power these fastballs out of the park. Sometimes it's a team with the better line drive approach, the better ability to put the ball in play that wins, especially in the postseason where base running is magnified, defense is magnified, putting the ball in play is magnified. So Phillies need to do all those little things as well, but we know they're a better team when they hit home runs. All teams are better when they hit home runs, but this particular Phillies team is better when they're hitting the ball in the gaps and slugging. And Trey Turner's backspinning them out of the ballpark. And Bryce Harper's in one of his grooves where he hits 3 home runs in a postseason series. So their stars need to play well. And their offensive stars are guys that drive the baseball. And their pitching stars are Nola and Wheeler and Sanchez, guys that pitch deep into games. So that's the kind of, I think, the recipe they need. You see a lot of times in postseasons, managers are really quick to the bullpen, and there's times when Rob has been that way. Well, I think you got a staff now that you need to kind of think, a little bit old school. I want to get 7 from this guy, shorten the number of outs that the bullpen has to get. I'm going to ride this starting rotation, get a little offense, and see what happens.
Yep, I'm with you. Case in point, Wheeler, right? Got to get 7 out of Wheeler.
Got it. If it's the Mets, Anthony, he's going to be revved up. And, at 33 years old, whatever he is, he knows how to handle it. He's a veteran, He's been through a lot in his career. But the Mets really made no effort to re-sign him after he opened his career there. And I think in 2014, he made like 31 starts for the team. Then he has Tommy John surgery, and the Mets go to the World Series. But, he's tucked away in Port St. Lucie rehabbing. He actually wanted to go to the World Series. They said, no, stay down there and keep rehabbing. So I think, there's some things that would probably drive him if the Mets were the opponent. And I think it's dangerous when a guy gets
want to see it, man. I want to see it, buddy.
Dangerous when a guy gets too amped up, but I think he's a guy that would channel it the right way.
Agreed. It's the Red October special brought to us by Ace Hardware. That's right, Ace Hardware Home Services. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next home project, man. They do it for you. All right, lastly, let's take a look at the rest of the playoff and the rest of the brackets. On the other side of the NL, It's a dream matchup for MLB. Padres, Dodgers, separated by the highway. And Padres showed you last night, man. They are just scary good. They chased Fried early.
They, I think I said this to you earlier in the week. The last handful of years, they seemed like a collection of skills and a collection of toolsy players, impressive tools that never really fit together. They seem to fit together now. Ironically, they say goodbye to Soto, who was the best player one of the best players in the game. And, all of a sudden they click, but, they got Machado, they got the shortstop, they got a great starting pitching staff.
Jackson Merrill.
Jackson,
I love that kid.
They great starting rotation, terrific bullpen. They're going to give the Dodgers all they can handle. That'll be a great series. Obviously, star power with Machado and Ohtani and Betts and Freeman. That's must-see TV. I don't know who comes out of that. The Padres feel like they got something special.
They do.
And they got the pitching to do some damage. That's going to be one, I don't know how it's going to work out, but it wouldn't surprise me if they advance.
How about Michael King? Oh, my God. Speaking of Soto trade,
he was
talking about filthy. Wow.
Filthy with that, kind of throws across his body a little bit, crossfire, and then he throws that sweeper slider, and then he sinks it. It's going both directions, and
I know.
Crossfire.
It's unbelievable. I know there's no way as a hitter, you got to just guess which way is it going.
He's a big, good-looking pitcher with electric stuff. I mean, they got him in that trade with the Yankees for Juan Soto, and it's a trade it's an old-fashioned baseball fan. It's helped both teams, and they got the catcher there too. So, after waiting for several years, the Padres just never seem to fit together. They fit together now, and they are really dangerous.
Yeah, the kid Merrill I love. He hit Fried. Fried's a lefty and Merrill's a lefty, and he hit that triple to give them a 5-1 lead. What a piece of hitting! Dead center field, right off the base of the wall. It was just incredible. And Fried's tough, man. To barrel up from the left side, that was impressive hitting.
It's going to be fascinating, him or Paul Scanes, who wins the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
guy who played every day on a team that's going deep into the postseason against an electric young pitcher who did mind-blowing things. It's going to be a fascinating vote there. But yeah, you're right. Merrill's a good player, man, and Padres are a great ball club.
All right, let's go quickly to the American League and the Tigers. The story of the playoffs. Listen, I thought they were dangerous in game one with Skubal going, but then game two, they throw a bullpen game and they completely shut down the Astros. And the Astros, they got big money, Presley in that pen, Presley, and of course Hader, and they just gave away that game yesterday.
Yeah, Hader with 2 very costly walks, and as good as Zach Wheeler is, this Tarek Skubal is something, man. He might be the best pitcher in baseball. He's going to probably win the Cy Young.
He reminds me of Carlton. He's a power lefty with an effortless delivery, right? That's not taxing on his shoulder or elbow.
Yeah, and there's always that one team that has the magic potion brewing in a postseason. In 2022 it was the Phillies.
Yeah.
They rallied late in that game one. Haven't been in the postseason in a decade, and they rally late and weirdly against St. Louis, hit batsmen, a bloop single, a couple walks. They don't get Helsley out of the game, and the Phillies parlay that into a World Series run. So every year it seems to have somebody that's sipping the magic potion, and you wondered if it was the Mets or if it was the Tigers, even the Royals. They have a good young team, and they have a great leadership in veteran catcher Salvi Perez. But you wonder if they're the sipping the magic potion. But the Mets lose last night. You don't know where they're going, and the Tigers just blitz a team that had been to 7 straight ALCSs, and you got the AJ Hinch connection, the old manager, the new manager, and they seem like they got a little magic. And Matt Vierling's over there, and
Yeah,
he lived it
leading
with
off.
the Phillies in 2022. He's
Yeah.
got to be feeling like he's living it again over there with the Tigers. So, good young team that has to be coming out of that series with Houston with a lot of confidence. Could be dangerous.
Now, in the other series, it's a shame for Baltimore because their bats they had an outage, a huge power outage, couldn't hit. I like the Royals. I love Witt. I love, you mentioned Perez, Pascatino, the first baseman, who's a lefty, who's good. Massey's the second baseman. He's good. I don't know. I mean, Reagan's is fantastic. You got Lugo. I don't know. I think they can give the Yankees a sweat.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the, almost like the Phillies with the layoff. The Yankees have had the layoff. You got the Royals going in there with nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. And you got the Yankees almost feeling like they have everything to lose. They're the team that should win. They're the team with Juan Soto, the team with Aaron Judge in the middle. This, historic 1-2 punch. Garrett Cole, the big payroll, the big stage. Going to be pressure on the Yankees, no pressure on the Royals. It's going to be a fascinating series. I feel like the Yankees can handle all this pressure. I feel like, it's time for them too. It's like the Phillies' time, but it's also the Yankees' time. You can say it about a lot of teams. So that'll be a good one to watch in New York.
Well, it's going to be a blast. We will be back tomorrow as we'll find out who the Phillies' opponent will be for Saturday. Will it be Milwaukee or the Mets? Ooh, Jimmy. Oh, man, it's going to be great. My brother, enjoy the game tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow.
What's your prediction tonight?
I think the Mets win.
You think the Mets win? I think the Mets win too, because I think the baseball gods want Mets, Phillies. It'll be wild. But
I agree. I just see it. I think it's going to be one of those back and forth bullpen games, and runs are at. I think it's going to be a little higher scoring game. The Milwaukee righties should be able to get to Quintana. I think the Mets will get to Myers. I think it should be a fun game.
And if it's not the Mets, I hope Rhys Hoskins hits a game-winning home run and spikes that bat and then runs to the airport and comes back to Philly.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. But we can't wait for Saturday at Citizens Bank Park for the great Jim Salisbury. I'm Anthony Gargano. Thanks to Ace Hardware for our Red October special. See you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.